Howdy my totally as always tubular gamers, and we're back with, you guessed it, another ranking video, and today we're talking Avatar. Not Blue People Avatar, we're talking Avatar The Last Airbender. Now for the unfamiliar, Avatar is a Nickelodeon show that was on in the 2000s, and it was about this kid named Aang who would master all these elements, and he would go up against opposing forces with his friends. That might be the most reductive summary I've ever done on something, but Avatar is a very beloved cartoon. I remember in the 2000s you really couldn't go anywhere without Avatar being somewhere. And people really look back fondly on the series thanks to its characters, its really solid writing, its themes, and just how well the show has aged. The show has aged remarkably, and it's still a fantastic show even nowadays. The show would end up blowing up again when it was brought to Netflix in 2020, when everyone was locked inside and was like, let's just watch Avatar. Like, I had not seen so many people hype for Avatar since the 2000s, way more than when Legend of Korra, the sequel series, was going on. And nowadays, Avatar, yeah, it's actually still pretty popular. But sadly, we're not here to talk about the show today, and before I continue, I'm just going to recommend the show to everyone. Like, the show is fantastic, it is aged incredibly well, it has a bunch of topical themes, it has some superb characters, it's expertly written. Like, this is just a phenomenal show. There's a reason so many people love it, because it really is that great. But a series like Avatar seems absolutely perfect for a video game. It seems like a slam dunk, easy win. Almost like low-hanging fruit. It seems so easy. I mean, like, Dragon Ball has had so many fantastic games, and maybe that's not the best comparison, but an Avatar game, yeah, that seems like a pretty easy win. But as you'll see in today's video, it's apparently not as easy as you would think, as when it comes to Avatar The Last Airbender and good video games, it is basically a wasteland. See, over the years, there's been a number of Avatar games. There's been Avatar games for the home consoles, for the handhelds, for the phones, for the computer, for the browser, but which ones are we talking about today? Today I'm going to be talking about all the Avatar games on the home consoles. While there is a whole other world of Avatar games for phones and PC and browsers and all that, we are just sticking to the home console video games, as this is what I'm familiar with, this is what I remember growing up with. And the latest Avatar game, The Quest for Balance, is a home console game, and I'd like to include it. I'd like to include it since I was sent a review code by the publisher, so major thank you for that. Very cool of you. I appreciate the code. So with all of this in mind, we're going to be taking a look at 6 home console Avatar games. We're going to be ranking them worst to best, stacking them all up against each other, giving each one a little review, which one's the worst, which one's really the worst, and are there even any good games here? Again, just the home console games. I'm not familiar with any of the PC games or the browser games or the phone games. I just know the home console games, and this is what I have experience with. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. We got the super thanks also. Let's just get right into it. Of these 6 games, which do I think is the worst? What is actually the bottom of the barrel for the Avatar The Last Airbender games? And here we have the latest Avatar game, Avatar The Quest for Balance. Again, I'm going to give a shout out to the publisher. Major thanks for hooking me up with the review key, but sadly, this game is not the Avatar game that anyone was hoping it would be. You know, when I saw that initial trailer, I just went, this game does not look very good, and sadly, it does not play any better than it looks. But what exactly is this game? So this game is actually a retelling of pretty much the whole show of Avatar. They go through all 3 seasons and try to have some of the plot points here. They don't have all the plot points, and actually the game misses plenty of important moments and events here, but it tries to go through the whole show. But I'll be honest, the storytelling is very lackluster in this game. Not only do they skim over important events or just don't mention them at all, but what's here just feels incredibly rushed, lazy, and underdeveloped. I mean, the way the game is told through these just very bland-looking cutscenes is really an indication of how the storytelling is as a whole. Speaking of presentation, let's talk about the presentation for a second. This game came out in the year 2023. You could convince me this game came out in 2008. You could convince me this is a PS2 game. It's a follow-up to the last Avatar game on PS2. That's what you could tell me, and I'd believe you. Now, I get it. This is a budget game. They didn't have a ton of money to make the graphics awe-inspiring or anything. This isn't going to be God of War. I mean, I shouldn't even bring God of War up in this video, let alone when talking about this game. But this game just looks terrible. Like other Nickelodeon games that have come out in the last couple years, like the kart racer games, they don't look great, but they look better than this. Like, the cell shading doesn't look particularly great. The models don't look that bad, but the environments, ooh, they're so flat and dull and just bland. The presentation is just in the pits. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, it actually doesn't play really all that different from the Avatar games of the PS2 era either. It's a very basic cooperative action-adventure game where you play as Aang and his friends, and you can switch between them on the fly. You can't actually play in co-op unless it's on PC where it's just broken. And I could never get it to work, but you can play cooperatively with another human, and you'll go through very linear levels, beating up enemies, solving puzzles, exploring the environment, improving your bending skills, and completing quests. You'll actually get quests from main characters, and you'll even get side quests that you can complete on the side in some of these more open-ended areas. But what does all this mean? Not much, because the actual gameplay is so incredibly simplistic. Like, again, this is a game that came out in 2023. The combat is as basic as it gets. There's a few attacks here. Each of the characters have different attacks, and you can even unlock new attacks. As you play through the game, you'll get skill points. You can even find skill points hidden in the world, and you can actually invest them into a tree to get new attacks, new abilities, upgrade your stats, etc. But it doesn't mean much because the combat is so basic. Like, you just really mash one or two buttons, and then you're done with it. The combat never challenges you. It never has any interesting scenarios. And it feels like they don't even try to take advantage of the bending powers, and the same really goes for the exploration and the puzzles. It's incredibly simple puzzles, like the most unimaginative, boring shit ever. Like, there is this one puzzle they repeat so many times over, it is mind-numbing, where you have to get a torch to light a fire somewhere, and along the way, there are streams of water shooting out that will put the torch out. Instead of you being able to, I don't know, jump over the stream, walk over the stream, go under the stream, anything like that, you have to find a way to get around it, and they create a puzzle out of it, and you do this way too many times. And it really just does not get any better. The puzzles and really just the whole world exploration is somehow worse than the PS2 games. The PS2 games are mad linear. This game is very linear, but they do let you go off the beaten path to explore. But exploring these areas, it's not fun, it's not engaging. The level design is just so simplistic and basic. And then it's just not rewarding. What you get for doing these side areas, it's really not worth it. And when you get into the combat, it's still just as unenjoyable, bland, basic, and uninspired. And don't even get me started on the boss fights. You know, they weren't fun the first time, but the third or fourth time you fight Zuko, it is still not fun. They repeat the exact same fight over and over. It's so lazy. Speaking of lazy, none of the characters move their mouths. Are you serious? What year is this? Come on now. Okay, the combat's not good, presentation isn't good, puzzles, exploration, none of that's any good. But there is another mini game in here where it's basically Subway Surfers. I'm not even kidding, it's actually just Subway Surfers, where it's 3 lanes and you just dodge stuff. You're either on Appa, you're sliding down a mountain, you're on a ship. Like, it really is just Subway Surfers. In fact, I would expect this game to be on those TikToks where like Family Guy's on the top and then a game's on the bottom, and it looks like this. This is the game that's on the bottom when you're trying to watch Family Guy on TikTok. And if my audience is too old to know what I'm talking about, just know it's bad. These mini games are bad. This game is bad. It's kind of mind-blowing to see that this game came out in 2023. It is like shockingly bad. Like, I would not have expected a game to come out and be this bad 5-10 years ago, let alone this year. Like, this is one of the best years in gaming ever, and they just dropped this pile of crap on us. Like, do not play this game. Do not look at this game. Do not even think about this game. It sucks. And here we have The Last Airbender releasing for the Wii in 2010. This is based off the live-action Avatar movie that is just so well received. Truly one of the greatest adaptations from cartoon to movie. The Last Airbender just absolutely did not understand anything about Avatar. Wow. The Last Airbender movie, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have talked about it for like an hour, but it is one of the worst movies ever. I remember being mildly excited as a kid for it and going to see it, and just like everyone else going, wow, that wasn't just bad, that was unbelievably bad. And so you know what THQ did? They got a game made after the movie. And you know what, this game, it's better than the movie, I can give it that. But that's like saying that the shit I took last night was better than the shit I took this morning. Like, it really is not hard to be better than the movie. So as you can guess, this game loosely follows the movie, which loosely followed the first season of Avatar. We got a lot of loose shit here. And when it comes to this game's storytelling, it's certainly better than the movie. Is it really any good though? Not really, but yeah, it's better than the movie. I'd rather watch this game's cutscenes and have the story told to me through the game than whatever that disaster by M. Night Shyamalan is. Now, when it comes to this game's gameplay, it is a 3D action-adventure game where you'll be doing a lot of beat-em-up combat, you'll be doing some platforming, some exploration, and a little bit of puzzle solving. If you've played any licensed game from the mid-2000s to early 2010s, you'll feel right at home here. In the game, you'll be playing as Aang, Zuko, or the Blue Spirit. When you're Aang, you'll be beating people up with airbending. When you're Zuko, you'll be firebending. And when you're the Blue Spirit, you'll have some sword attacks, but you're mostly going to be in stealth. The game actually does kind of become a stealth game. When it comes to this game's beat-em-up combat, which is what you're doing most of the time, it's not very good. It's not exactly rewarding or satisfying. It doesn't feel nice. It's very clunky, and when the Wii Remote's involved, you already know you're going to be waggling, and yeah, you do plenty of waggling in this game. Look, it's a very mindless beat 'em up. I'm not going to come out here and say this is the worst beat 'em up I've ever seen, but it does not feel good. It is not satisfying, and it's just not fun to beat these enemies up. It feels very mindless and just dull right off the bat, no matter who you're playing as. When it comes to the platforming in this game, it's very basic. The level design is very basic and does very little to differentiate itself from basically any other video game. The puzzles and exploration is, again, very dull. There's just not much going on here. And when it comes to the stealth, it works. It's functional, but I wouldn't say it's particularly good or engaging. In fact, nothing with this game really is particularly good or engaging. It's not absolutely awful. I'm going to say that. It's not the worst game I've played. It's not the worst licensed game on Wii. It's certainly not the worst licensed game on Wii. But this game, it's just not very fun to play. Like, I just never found myself engaged or intrigued or really even just interested in what I was doing in this game. It was just such a dull experience all the way around. I barely even have anything to say about it because it just felt so bland. It's just a very cookie-cutter, generic, licensed action game that really you play for like an hour and you forget you even played it like 6 months later. Maybe I went into this game with the wrong mindset because I really hate the movie. Maybe if I was like a kid and I didn't see the movie, I'd probably think this game was pretty okay. I wouldn't think it was great, but I'd think it was alright. I mean, it's got a decent presentation and it's got Avatar shit in it. But coming back to this game as an adult, knowing what I know about the movie, the show, the lore, and the potential of an Avatar game, I'm certainly not impressed with this one. It's just a very generic, bland, dull, waggly licensed game that I don't recommend anybody tries. But you know what? It's still better than the movie. Despite everything, I'd rather play this 3 times over than watch that movie again. And so here we have Avatar: The Last Airbender releasing in 2006. Now, this game has been released for a variety of platforms, but the version I'm most familiar with is the GameCube version. So this was the very first Avatar game, and it's got a pretty interesting setup. It actually does feature an original story set between Book 1 and 2 of the series. And the game begins with Aang and Katara hearing reports of a waterbender going missing, and so they go to investigate, and obviously a lot more happens besides that. When it comes to this game's plot, it's okay. It's actually not that bad. Of course, it's nowhere near as good as the show, and the writing and the characters and all the emotional bits are not really there since it's just a game, and they also can't really mess with the core Avatar story since that's already set in stone, so you already know what's going to happen, but the plot's not that bad. It certainly could be worse. Now, one of the first things you'll notice when you look at this game are the graphics, the presentation, and I'll just say the presentation is not particularly great in this game. You know, for 2006, games looked a lot better than this. Even licensed games look a lot better than this. The Ed, Edd n Eddy game looked much better than this game. This game, while it does kind of try to look like the show with the cell shading, it just doesn't look very good. The animation's clunky, the textures aren't great, the cell shading just doesn't look very good. And it's just not a very good looking game. But you know, when it comes to the gameplay, what does this game actually play like? It is an action role-playing game. If you've ever played like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or maybe X-Men Legends, it's kind of like that, but for Avatar. The game is single player only, which is a strange choice, but it sees you playing as Aang, Katara, Haru, or Sokka. You can switch between any of them on the fly, and each character uses their own trademark weapon and fighting style. And you go around just beating the piss out of everything. You'll be beating people up, you'll be beating the shit out of the firebenders, the machines, a ton of different animals. Most of the enemies are based off the first book, but there's plenty of things to beat up. And tell me if you haven't heard this one before. As you defeat enemies, you'll gain experience, and then you learn new special abilities for each character. I know, really riveting stuff here. Along the way, you'll get items that can help you with either the quest or, during battle, such as healing potions. You can even collect certain resources and bring them to artisans to make special items that can help you throughout the game. Really, yeah, you're just going from area to area, talking to people and beating up enemies. And as you play through the game, there's even a couple mini games that pop up, like this rhythm mini game or this hot cold mini game, and I'm not going to say these are particularly great, but it's a good change of pace. Alright, so I've described to you what the gameplay is, but is this game actually any good? You know, as a kid, I thought this game was actually pretty decent. Nowadays, though, I'm not so sure. It's a very mindless beat 'em up with light RPG elements that goes on for about 4 hours. If this game had 4-player co-op and you had some friends come over and you played through this game, I actually think it'd be a really fun time. But playing by yourself for a couple hours with this game, it is just okay. It is very mid. The combat, which is what you're doing a majority of the game, doesn't feel particularly great. It feels just okay. Like sometimes it does feel a little clunky and it's not really satisfying, and a lot of your attacks don't have a good impact. Something that made Ultimate Alliance and X-Men Legends was just how much fun the combat was, how great the attacks felt, how you just really beat the shit out of some Marvel characters. In this game though, I just never got that, and I was never really satisfied with the combat, and I just thought it felt relatively dull, and the RPG elements are really basic. Your characters don't get like significantly better to the point where they're totally different by the end of the game from the start. No, it just feels like you get a couple new abilities here and there, and that's really it. Even with this game's short runtime, it still did feel a little repetitive by the end of it. I mean, you just really beat up the same looking enemies for a couple hours and that's it. The game doesn't ever challenge you or really bring anything new into the fold. The mini games change things up a little bit, but there's nowhere near enough variety with this game to keep me interested more than like 2 or 3 hours, and the game's not really longer than that anyway. Look, I'm sure plenty of people have nostalgia and childhood memories with this game, and I'm not here to shit on them. You've still got your memories, I've still got my memories with this game, but coming back to this game nowadays, yeah, it's a very generic, bland beat 'em up that goes on for a few hours, and it happens to be based off The Last Airbender. I don't really recommend it, but this game could be a hell of a lot worse, that's all I'll say. And so here we have Avatar The Last Airbender Into the Inferno, releasing in 2008 for the Wii and PS2. This is the third game in the little PS2 trilogy of Avatar games. When it comes to this game's story, it's really based on the third and final season, which I'm not even going to come close to spoiling. I'll just say, yeah, it's based on the third season. And when it comes to how this game approaches its storytelling, it's fine. It's totally fine. So when it comes to the gameplay of this Avatar game, it isn't too different from the previous 2 Avatar games. It still is a 3D action adventure where you'll be beating up a ton of the Fire Nation, doing some platforming, some minor puzzle solving, and really just interacting with the environment, going from A to B and playing out a bunch of the big set pieces from the show. You get to play as a couple different Avatar characters, each of which with their own unique special abilities that they're known for, and the game does support full co-op. Now, this game was first and foremost a Wii title, and you can see that even if you play the PS2 version, as there's this big pointer on screen that you will control that you use for really almost everything in this game outside of the beat 'em up combat. You'll use it to interact with the environment, like you can pull ice out of the water so you can get across the water, or maybe you gotta climb a wall, so you'll pull out these big stones from the wall so you can climb up the wall. I think it's actually a pretty cool use of the bending powers. Sure, I wish they went a little further with this gimmick and maybe actually had more than just basic platforming behind it, but I think it's still cool, and it is actually different from some of the other Avatar games. Something though that is not different from the other Avatar games is the beat 'em up combat. It's very basic, it's very button mashy. You really just press one button over and over and that's your entire combat system here. There's nothing special about it, and it really does basically nothing to differentiate itself from like any other beat 'em up, despite it being about the Avatar and all the bending and all that. It's just really bland and basic. And really that's what I could kind of say about the entire game. While it does have some unique ideas like using the bending powers on the world and even a little bit of puzzle solving, ultimately this is just kind of a bland, basic 3D action adventure game that goes on for maybe 2-3 hours at most. And when it comes to this game's presentation, it's like the game itself, nothing special at all. And when playing through this game, in fact, really when playing through any of these games, it just makes me want to go watch the show, as it's just so much better than this. This game, very middling, nothing special, just kind of a bland license game, and that's really all I gotta say about it. You'll probably forget this game even exists by the end of the day. And here we have Avatar The Last Airbender The Burning Earth, releasing in 2007. Now, like many of you, I know this game for being more than just an Avatar game, but the achievement game. The game was released on Xbox 360 and is notorious for being the easiest game to get 1,000 gamer score from. You can get 1,000 gamer score from this game in under 5 minutes. It's actually really quite funny. And I am certain plenty of people have bought this game just to get the gamer score and never actually played the game. But what is this game? This game based off the second season of Avatar, and it loosely follows the events of the show. The storytelling in this game, it's pretty decent. It's not terrible. It makes me do want to watch the show instead, but it's not the worst thing. So when it comes to how this game plays, it is, you guessed it, a 3D action adventure game where you'll do some platforming, you'll do some beat 'em up gameplay, some puzzle solving, and interacting with the environment. I will say this game is entirely playable in co-op, which is how I would recommend it if you're going to try this game at all. You get to play as a couple different characters from the show, and each of them do have their own abilities, and it feels like I've said the same thing like 5 times now, but when it comes to the gameplay, it really doesn't feel all that different from any of the other Avatar games I've talked about. You go through some very linear levels, solve some incredibly basic puzzles, and sometimes these puzzles do require both characters working together, but they're still incredibly basic puzzles, and then you beat up some Fire Nation fools. Okay, there's more than just the Fire Nation that you fight in this game, but you know what? Fuck the Fire Nation. All my homies hate the Fire Nation. You're beating up the Fire Nation. Now, something worth mentioning is this was the first Avatar game that you actually could engage in all 4 bending styles, which is cool. And you can even do these dramatic air battles where Momo and Appa can even join you. But despite this, the combat in this game is incredibly button mashy. It's basic, simplistic, and just not all that exciting. Like, it feels a little better than the 2 other Avatar games I just spoke about, but it still doesn't feel very good. There's just not a lot of weight or impact, and it just isn't all that satisfying, let alone fun. And exploring these environments, solving these really basic puzzles, it's just kind of there, you know? It's not horrible, but it's not exactly good either. Nothing tests you or challenges you, and it's nothing you haven't seen before in really any other video game. Especially any other action adventure or licensed game. And you know, having a buddy with you, it makes things a bit more tolerable if there's actually another human playing with you. Yeah, it is a little bit more exciting. It's a little bit more fun. I had a little bit more fun with this game than the other 2 Avatar games I just mentioned, but not much more fun. Now, something different from other Avatar games that you probably immediately noticed is that this game has no cell shading, like whatsoever. It's just not cell shaded, and it actually looks pretty okay. For 2007, it didn't look great, but it looked decent, and it might be the best looking Avatar game, period. Like, it's either this or Korra. I mean, this game looks better than Quest for Balance. But that is something that differentiates itself from the other Avatar games. But like the other Avatar games, this game, when it comes to its length, is like 2 to 3, maybe 3.5 hours long. And by the time you get to the end of it, it's starting to get repetitive anyway, and then it just ends. It's an incredibly forgettable, unmemorable, just kind of generic experience. Like, there's a reason the game is known as the achievement game, and the game where you get the 1,000 gamer score immediately, because the game itself is nothing special at all. And this is considered one of the better Avatar games, and I'm out here saying, yeah, don't even bother playing it unless you really need that gamer score. Just watch the show, man. These games just do not do the show justice. And here we have The Legend of Korra releasing in 2014. I believe The Legend of Korra is the best of the Avatar games. It was developed by Platinum Games, a legendary game developer. They've made amazing games like Bayonetta, Vanquish, and Metal Gear Rising. And The Legend of Korra, you know, it's not a great game. It's probably one of Platinum's weakest games, to be honest, but it's still an alright game, and alright is way better than anything I've talked about today. Now, if you made it to this part of the video and somehow aren't familiar with Legend of Korra, really, it's the sequel series to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is why I'm including it in this video. There's only one other Korra game. It's on the 3DS, and it's kind of like a Fire Emblem tactical RPG. It even has the same story as this game, but we're not talking about that one. We're talking about, again, only the home console games, and so here's The Legend of Korra. This game, it takes place in between Season 2 and 3, and does have an original story. It sees Korra being opposed by a chi blocker, and her trying to stop them, and that's really it. Like, this might be one of my spicy hot takes, but I was never huge on the Legend of Korra TV show. Like, it was alright, but man, Avatar was so much better. This game story, though, this makes the show look like gold. This game story is a joke. It's so basic and short, and like nothing happens. Like, I get it, you know, it's in between seasons. They obviously can't mess with the canon or the story because the seasons are already set in stone, but yeah, this game just does nothing interesting with the plot. The plot is easily the weakest part of this game, that or the length. But when it comes to the gameplay, this is kind of what I've always wanted from an Avatar game, where, you know, you just get a bunch of elements to bend and you just beat some ass, and it actually is, you know, a good hack and slash or a good beat 'em up. This game, like I said, it was developed by Platinum, and it certainly doesn't feel anywhere near as complex or good as other Platinum games. In fact, some people have called it Platinum Light, which I agree with, but it actually is a solid beat 'em up. The gameplay really sees Korra moving from point A to B in very linear environments, just beating the piss out of as many people as possible. You really just attack everything that moves, actually. In this combat, it's actually good. I know, shocker, right? Maybe my standards were just completely annihilated by the last couple Avatar games, but I think the beat 'em up combat, it's actually pretty decent in this game. Is it really button mashy and simplistic and really requires very little thought? Yes, it is those, but it actually has a lot of good qualities about it. All of the attacks have impact and feedback. The enemies react in a way that actually is satisfying. You get to do some really cool looking attacks. When you do these giant earth attacks and pillars are coming out of the ground and people are flying into the air, it actually feels nice. As you defeat a ton of enemies, you upgrade your bending abilities and get new abilities. You become stronger. It's actually, again, satisfying. What an idea. The combat has weight to it. It's fun. And you actually have a decent sized moveset. It's not just basic attack after basic attack. You actually can do some cool shit in this game, especially by the end of the game. Sure, at the beginning you don't really have any abilities and it is really basic, but as you play through the game, you do get the ability to bend everything, and the game becomes more and more fun as you play through it because you have more options to attack with. Again, it's not the most complex games like Bayonetta or Metal Gear, or really most hack and slashes probably run circles around this game's combat, but compared to what we've had before, this is good. Sure, I wish there was a little bit more enemy variety, but you know, beating the shit out of these robots and these ninjas and these assholes, yeah, it's actually a pretty good time. When you're not beating the crap out of stuff, you're either going around these very linear levels looking for some little secrets, or you're doing very basic platforming or one of the mini games. Unfortunately, the mini games in this game suck. Like, you do pro bending matches and these really do suck. They are not well designed, they are not fun, they are not engaging, and they're challenging for the wrong reasons. Like, I hate these. I hated these. And then the endless runner with Naga, no, I don't like this either. Like, it's, again, similar to Temple Run or Subway Surfers. It's better than Quest for Balances, but I didn't like this either. And unfortunately, a good like fourth of the game is these mini games because the game isn't very long. That's probably the biggest issue aside from the story with this game, is the length. The game is like 3 hours long. It seems to be the curse of the Avatar games. We can't get a game over 3 hours. The only one that's longer than like 3 or 4 hours is the Quest for Balance, and that one I wish was over in 3 minutes because it sucks so much. Unfortunately, Korra, it ends right when the combat's getting good, right when you get all the options to just start destroying shit, then it just kind of ends. There's even a new game plus here, but I'm not going to play this game anytime soon. I bought this game almost 10 years ago, but I did not actually play it until this video. I just never got around to it, never felt like it, and I'm glad I bought it because the game was actually delisted. It was never physically released either. The only way to have gotten this game was buying it a couple years ago. Otherwise, you're going to have to find a download somewhere else. And it's a real shame too, because this is the only game on this list that I could say might be actually worth checking out. Look, it's not a great game, it doesn't have a good length to it, but the gameplay is actually decent, and if you like Avatar or you like Korra, I think you'll like this game. Sure, the story is quite lacking and the minigames are ass, but it's still a decent to good game. And I actually had some fun with it. The game looks decent too, it's got a good cel shaded look. All in all, when it comes to Avatar: The Last Airbender games, you know, it's a real shame. It is ridiculous that we are in 2023 and we still don't have a truly good Avatar game. Like, even Korra at its best is still just alright. In any other series, it would be one of the low points of the series. The fact that it's the best Avatar game really just speaks volumes about the whole series when it comes to video games. Like, so many of these games are mediocre to bad, and I don't really recommend any of them except Korra, and you can't even get Korra anymore. And so I'm just like, what the hell? What is Nickelodeon doing, man? We need an Avatar game that's like Hogwarts Legacy, or better yet, we need a fighting game. An Avatar fighting game would be awesome. A lot of these Avatar games have like a fighting mode in them, but I think an Avatar fighting game is the right way to go at this point because whatever they've been doing in the past clearly isn't cutting it. I know there's a really cool fan game in the works, that looks cool, but any games from Nickelodeon, man, it's just sad how bad some of these games are and how it doesn't look like things are going to get any better. But that's it for today's video. You know, go watch the show. The show's fantastic. These games, yeah, none of them are probably worth playing, honestly, but that's it for today. Hope everyone has a fantastic day. If you made it to this part of the video, comment Hamtaro, as in that old anime series. And yeah, that's it. Please like, share, comment, sub, all that good shit. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.